out there. Once again, I bring you another amateur model build, the 116 Jungle Gym Revell model. And let me just say that this is my first 116 scale build, and it actually went fairly well. Now, once again, a lot of people who are pro modelers have issues probably with the way I build it, but that's okay. An amateur model builder. I am not a professional, so what you see is what you get as far as this build goes. You just saw the quick version of me switching over from what you saw to the painted version. Now, I am not the best painter when it comes to doing models. I'll admit that straight up front. But I guess I got this one okay. It was enough to satisfy me. I didn't quite get the shine on it I wanted, but I gave it a shot. I also found out some things and learned some things building this. Never try to put clear coat on a windshield. It doesn't work very well. I did manage to clean up my front windshield and get it back to a good semi-clear state. But my rear windshield, I jacked it up. But that's okay. Funny car racers don't have to see out the rear windshield. So here we are putting the motor together. I do say the motor went together a lot better than I thought it would. The instructions for this model kit are done very well. I had no trouble following them and getting everything in its place. There were only a few issues when it came to the putting the fuel lines in. They give you lots of good piping, several different sizes to work with. This one came with yellow ignition wires, which I did like that because it kind of makes the engine stand out. And let me tell you, once again, I'm terrible at doing these ignition systems. But because of the scale of this one, I was able to accomplish it fairly well because, well, it's there in the kit to do. Here's my finished engine, and I'm about to do the tires. Now, I did something a little different with my tires on this. These are very soft rubber tires. There is this stuff called it's like a stuffing for animals, things, teddy bears and things of such. It's a polyfoam or a polyfill. So I pulled off some small pieces of that, and I put those on the inside of my slicks because, one, I've seen what happens when these slicks support the weight of the car, and they start breaking down over time. So with the polyfill inside of them, it helps support the car without the tire having to do all the supporting. So it gives it added support. I hope they last a while. So I'm doing this frame. Everything was going fairly well with the frame, but I don't know if this is something that happens with these frames a lot, but some of the pieces didn't quite line up the way they should, so I had to make some adjustments to make it work correctly. One of the things I found out for these ignition system wires, well, not wires, well, the ignition system does have wires in them, but the fuel lines and the oil lines are actual tubing. So one of the tricks I came up with to help getting the adjustments of the tubing to where I wanted them was bread ties. I know, it's crazy, but if you take a bread tie and strip off the outer coating on it, you have a very thin wire, and that thin wire will fit in the smallest fuel lines on this model. Once you get those down in there, you can then, when you attach it to the attach point, then you have the ability to actually bend that wire a little more and it stay in position, because without the wire inside the tubing, it puts a lot of stress on where it attaches. And where it attaches on these models are just very, very small plastic pins. And if there's too much stress, I found out they can break off. I had at least 2 of them do that on me. But I had to break out my drill kit and do some drilling. Now, another one of the things you probably see on that table is the crazy glue or super glue. That come in very handy on some of these parts, especially where the fuel lines and the oil lines connect to those little connection points. After I got the tubing on there, I would dab just a little bit of that crazy glue in there to make sure that the fuel line did not slip off, especially if I had to put it under stress or a bend, in which case at least on one point it did bend, and it sheared off the little connector. So that meant drilling a hole for the tubing, and then there you go, attaching it. Once I got it in the hole, I once again dabbed the crazy glue on it to hold it in place. So can't see what I'm doing there very well, but I am putting together the front end of this model, which is a spindly little piece of contraption. Now, I don't know how many other modelers do this with this model, but you're basically building a static model. So it's not going to do anything, but they give you a working front end where you can steer the wheels or reposition the front wheels. So the linkages actually work to a degree up until it goes to the steering wheel, and then it's just a linkage that can move back and forth. But it's probably faster and easier just to build the front end as a static model. But I felt challenged, and I thought, well, I'm going to make sure it works when I get done. If anything else, I will have done that. As an amateur modeler, I felt challenged to do that, because I don't know how many people actually perform that function. There I am connecting all those linkages up and coming up along the side there and getting to the cockpit. All I can say is that you've got to be excessively careful with that front end pieces, because they can snap in a heartbeat if you don't have the right clippers to get them off the tree. I am now working on the accelerator linkage to getting everything lined up on that. That was fun, because there were a few places in the instructions where it was a little vague as to where you attach it. So I had to go back over and check everything again to make sure I was getting it in the right place. My steering wheel wasn't in the right place, so I had to readjust that whole thing to get the steering wheel where it needed to go. I used a little bit too much brake line, I think, on the back section, because it was hanging a little lower than I would have liked for it to, and I should have probably redone it. But once I had all the brake lines attached to those spindly little T-junctions and stuff on there, I did not want to remove them again. It was just, too harrowing. There's my front end all together. The wheels, that was easy to part. Just a little dab of cement on the end of the thing, and it collected right up. So then I got to work on. Now that fire extinguisher really should have been I should have applied that back several steps because it was harder, way harder to get on while it was in place there. It would have been easier to put it on while it wasn't on there. I miss that part. And if you're, I don't know if you can tell from the video or not, but I used the worst gold spray paint for this model ever. So it looks like crap up close, and it probably shows up in the video in places, and you're probably going, what was it? It was just terrible. It was a Krylon gold paint, probably not meant for plastic. So I regretted using that, but it is what it is. Well, there we go. I did manage to get everything together on the back end. Now, I want to get to this part real quick because I'm going to bypass it really fast when it happens. They did not give you a parachute shroud line on this or a parachute release inside the cockpit of the car. So I had to make my own parachute release, and I had to build a shroud line to end it up really cool. And that was fun. Now the crazy thing was it actually came with the shroud material, it seems, which I wrapped around a piece of tubing and then glued it down and then attached it. I also had to build a parachute attached system on the differential to, well, hold it in, place. So here's my picture gallery that I'm running through and talking over because, well, this was a very short video because the time lapses were there's that cool parachute shroud piece on there. So it's getting down to the end here, and I hope you enjoyed this crazy quick build of the Jungle Gym. Yes, not professional, but I tell you what, it gets by for me, and I enjoyed the challenge of building a 1/16 scale model. I've got a couple of turntable videos coming up which kind of showcase the chassis without the body and then the body on the chassis. I was just glad that everything lined up when I put everything together. So that's all I got, and hey, thanks for watching my build of my 1/16 scale Jungle Gym by Revell. I plan to do something a little easier next time around. So all I can say is, if you're an amateur modeler, if you can get one of these, if I can build it, you can build it. So there you go. Just take your time as you do it, and it'll turn out good enough to make you happy. Oh, by the way, those decals were, they were really fun to do. I've never worked with decals that big before, so I was glad those turned out as good as they did. Y'all have a great day, and go out and build a model, because it is fun to do.